The Whispering Closet. It was a rainy Friday night, and Jenna had just finished unpacking the last of her boxes in her new apartment. She'd found it for a steal, an old, slightly run-down building on the edge of town. The place had its quirks: creaky floors, dim lighting, and a persistent, musty smell that no amount of air freshener seemed to fix. But she didn't mind. She was just glad to have her own space. By midnight, she was exhausted. She lay in bed, listening to the rain tapping on the windows, letting the steady sound lull her to sleep. She was just about to drift off when she heard it. A faint whisper coming from somewhere in the room. At first, she thought it was her imagination, just the settling of the building or the whistling of the wind. But then she heard it again, a low, almost inaudible whisper, like someone speaking just behind a closed door. She held her breath, straining to listen. It was too faint to make out the words, but it was definitely coming from the direction of her closet. "Hello?" she called out softly, feeling a bit silly. Of course, no one answered, and the whispering stopped. She let out a shaky laugh, telling herself she was just tired, her mind playing tricks on her. Turning over, she pulled the blankets up and closed her eyes. The next night, it happened again. Jenna had just turned off the lights when the whispering began, soft but insistent, as if someone were standing just inside the closet, speaking through the door. This time, she was certain it was real. With her heart pounding, Jenna switched on her bedside lamp and stared at the closet door. She could see it from her bed, closed as she'd left it. The whispering had stopped the moment she turned on the light. She took a deep breath and got up, crossing the room slowly. She placed her hand on the doorknob, hesitating. It felt cold, almost icy. She gave it a quick twist and threw the door open, half expecting to see someone standing inside. But there was nothing there. Just her clothes hanging neatly and a few unpacked boxes stacked in the corner. She let out a shaky laugh and closed the door, telling herself she'd been hearing things. But as she lay back down and turned off the light, the whispering resumed. This time louder, more insistent. By the third night, Jenna was on edge. She'd barely slept, the whispers haunting her every time she closed her eyes. She tried to ignore them, to tell herself it was her imagination, but the sounds were becoming clearer. She could make out fragments of words, though the voice was still too soft to understand. She even tried to record it, setting up her phone and hitting record before lying back in bed. But each time, as soon as she turned on the recording, the whispers stopped. She'd play back the audio only to hear silence, no trace of the haunting voice that filled her room at night. Frustrated, Jenna decided to leave the closet light on. Maybe it would keep whatever was causing the whispers at bay. She flipped the switch and crawled back into bed, relieved by the faint glow spilling out from the closet. For a moment, it worked. The room was silent, and she started to relax. But then she noticed something strange. The light in the closet began to flicker, first slowly, then more rapidly. She sat up, watching as the light sputtered and died, plunging the room back into darkness. The whispering began immediately, louder than ever. "Please, let me out," it rasped, the voice low and desperate, right on the edge of hearing. Jenna's blood ran cold. She pulled the blankets up to her chin, her heart pounding. She wanted to scream, to run, but she was frozen in place. She listened as the voice continued, whispering in a strange, fragmented language, words she couldn't understand but that filled her with dread. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the whispering stopped. The silence was deafening. Jenna lay there, barely daring to breathe, straining her ears for any hint of sound. That's when she heard the scratching. It was faint at first, like fingernails brushing against wood, but it grew louder, more frantic, as if something, or someone, was trying to claw its way out. It came from inside the closet. Gathering every bit of courage she had, Jenna threw off the blankets and grabbed her phone, turning on the flashlight. She shone it at the closet door, which was now rattling slightly, the scratching relentless. She approached slowly, her hand shaking as she reached for the doorknob. But just as she was about to turn it, the scratching stopped. Everything went silent. Jenna's hand hovered over the doorknob, and for a moment she considered leaving it alone. But some part of her had to know. She needed to see what was behind that door. With a deep breath, she turned the knob and yanked the door open, shining her flashlight inside. Nothing. Just her clothes and boxes, exactly as they'd been. But, as she let out a relieved sigh, her flashlight flickered. She moved it closer to the back of the closet, noticing a strange shape, barely visible in the dim light. It was a handprint. Pressed into the wall at the very back of the closet was a faint, dark handprint, smeared as if someone had tried to claw their way out. Jenna stepped back, heart pounding, and that's when she saw it. The handprint wasn't alone. There were dozens of them, all over the walls, faint but unmistakable, as if countless hands had reached out from the inside, desperate to escape. The whispering began again, louder now, surrounding her. "Let me out. Let me out." Jenna stumbled back, slamming the closet door shut. She raced out of the bedroom, grabbing her keys and phone, not daring to look back. She left the apartment that night, never to return. A week later, the building's maintenance crew went into the apartment to clean out Jenna's belongings. The manager had written her off as another tenant spooked by the building's character. But as he opened the closet to check for left-behind items, he noticed the walls. They were covered in handprints, dark smears trailing down as if something had clawed its way through. He shook his head, muttering about cheap paint and shoddy repairs. But as he turned to leave, he heard it. A faint, desperate whisper coming from the closet. "Let me out." If this story kept you awake, you'll love my longer videos. Check them out and be prepared for more sleepless nights.